As years go, our organization, our company, again, Ask the Pool Guy and Legendary Escapes, they're all the same thing, but they're kind of different. What surprises me the most about, I think, the last 3 years is it's this constant change. It's this constant blown away every single week by something new that happens, by what a customer says, by how a customer acts, by a whole new way, whole new place. It's been happening like literally like magic for 3 years. And I think there was a point, and I've told the story before, where a customer, we finished a project and they said, I would have paid 50% more for this. That was a defining moment for me. That if someone would have paid that much more, then it meant that I was no longer in the competitive mode. That it wasn't about cost of my thing versus the cost of that other guy's thing, and me adding this and them adding this, and apples to apples and oranges to oranges. That was the moment where that went away. That here's what I do, here's how I offer it, I over-deliver. Everything that I ever promise is going to be over-delivered. And every year, much like this year, I'm just blown away and amazed at the number of clients and customers out there that think this way. All my traditional business background, everything was you compete, you compete, you compete, and yet I never really bought into competition versus these are friendly guys that I also know that we help each other out. But now more than ever, I realize that there's no such thing as competition unless you allow it. Unless you allow it to be, what does my A versus your A mean, and then your B and my B, and then what does the bottom line look like, and then what's the difference? And that's where most companies end up. All fixated on price, all fixated on what they're going to get out of it, and yet 15 to 20% of the buying decision from a customer end is price. And yet that's all we focus on. Instead of, what do I bring to the table? What is it that I have? What is it that I do? It reminds me of a story years ago where there was someone else in our market that sold the exact same pool kit. This is back years ago when we were doing strictly vinyl liner swimming pools. And that guy had been out to the appointment, and I went out to the appointment, and the homeowner said, well, you're selling the same thing. You're more expensive than him. Why? What is it that you have? And my answer to him was, I have years of experience. He doesn't. That's it. Product's the same. He's a great guy. It's a great company. They'll serve you really well. If that $2,000 or $3,000 difference, whatever the number was, is enough, then save the $2,000 or $3,000. I'm okay with that. I have no problem with that. I think the guy that's doing the work is a good guy. I think his intentions are well. He just doesn't have a lot of, I didn't say this, but he doesn't have a lot of experience. But he'll do okay for you. Go with that. See, and the flip side to that now is the guy that really understands that they're not buying the concrete and they're not buying the steel and the liner and the gunite and they're not buying that anymore from me. What they're buying is me. They're buying the experience of what I can deliver to them in a way that we deliver it. It's different than it was years ago, and that all changed when I realized that a customer would have paid me a lot more money. So let's do the math for a minute on that one. And this is what finally shifted everything in my head, because it all starts here. It's got nothing to do with on paper. It has everything to do with what are you worth in your head. Say there was a $100,000 project, which is about what the project was, and the customer said, I'd have paid 50% more. 50% more of 100,000 is 50 grand. It would have cost me the exact same thing to build that pool, whether I charged them $150,000 or $100,000. Where does that extra money go? To me and the company. $50,000 more that customer would have been willing to pay. It all had to come from here for me to realize that I'm worth that more. My company is worth that more. My employees are worth that more. The infrastructure of who we are is worth that more. That pool would have cost the exact same amount of money to build at $100,000 or at $150,000. What's the better way to do it? And that's what changed for me, is the reality that I was no longer selling concrete. I was no longer selling steel. I was no longer selling pumps, heaters, and filters. I was selling something that you couldn't put a price on, because that customer would have paid 50 grand more for the art of what I did. 50 grand more for the experience of me being in their yard because of what we delivered to them. And that 50 grand would help everybody out. Spread out throughout the company. That'd have helped put my kids through school a whole lot easier. That'd have helped out, buying that new equipment when I needed that. Everything. But we live in these little boxes of tiny margins, and we live in these, we need to make more money, so we have to take more work. And yet, when the art happens, when you recognize that you're no longer selling water, you're no longer selling vinyl, you're no longer selling steel, you're no longer selling pumps, heaters, and filters, a shift like that can happen, and that's what happened to me.